Meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks and Duncan. Commissioner Matari is out of town at another conference. So with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Brooks for some opening comments.
Well, today's a special day. We've got David here, 10 years as of the 4th of November,
Yep.
which says a lot about David, and I don't know what that is. That's probably one of the most difficult jobs in the county in terms of people pulling you this way and pulling you that way, and all in good faith, very seldom otherwise. And David handles it. I used to say, and I still do, if you can't get along with David, you can't get along with anybody. Would you come up, please? Have a nice certificate here.
Yeah.
Just in case you forget.
Thank you.
I will take 1 minute if I
Absolutely.
As you might guess, you don't get to be my age without having done numerous studies. At this point in my life, I've been in over 1,000 public hearings in 7 municipalities and 2 private firms. This is far and away the best fit and the most enjoyable position I have had. For that, I have to thank the county commissioners.
Thank you, David.
And the community. Thank you.
You, David.
All right. Any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Conflicts of interest? Hearing none. Our public hearing, we will start off with ZON 22-0005 Atlas Zone Change. And I will just go ahead and read, they're kind of our rules of engagement for public hearings. All public comment and testimony will be civil and respectful. Address the Board of County Commissioners and not the audience. Address issues and not persons. Refrain from applause as it interferes with due process. Do raise your hands if you are in agreement with the speaker. When asked by a commissioner to stop, please do so promptly or face being asked to leave the meeting. If repeated requests by a commissioner are disregarded, the meeting will be recessed or adjourned depending on the issue at hand. And are we ready for the planner? Okay.
Good morning, Amy Hillen, planner for Kootenai County. The zone change here is for an agricultural to rural request. The owner is Rin Built Homes, but they are represented today by Ray Kimball with Whipple Consulting Engineering. The project site is approximately 60 acres. It's located at the southeast corner of Bocal Road and Atlas Road. It's east of some irrigation fields managed by the Hayden Regional Sewer Board, which are these circular areas you see here. And it is located north of the Union Pacific Railroad. The parcel is relatively flat, and in the area there's a mixture of agricultural and residential uses. The parcel is also located over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. When we look at the zoning map, the parcel is of course agricultural, but the area has a mixture of zoning, both agricultural, rural, and some mining to the north for a restricted surface mine. For the zone change request, the applicants do intend to subdivide at a later date, but this application is limited to zone change. And so separate applications will be required for future subdivision or future development, such as building permits. If we look at the history of zone changes in the area, there have been a few. There is one in 1994 to the south. This later became Diamond Bar Estates through a subdivision process. To the west is a zone change approved in 2003. Today this is Bocal Estates. And then to the north, a zone change approved in 2005, followed by a minor subdivision. This is known as Hass Homes. When we look at the land use designation on the comprehensive plan, it's transitional. The purpose of their transitional land use designation is to plan for future annexation. And so development should be limited for that ease of annexation. And the city it's closest to is the city of Hayden, and it's also located within the area of city impact, specifically the exclusive tier, and I'll go over that in a later slide, what that means for this application. When we look at the photos, again, it's currently used for agricultural purposes. There is a tenant currently leasing the area. As you can see, it's flat and mostly grassland at this time. Agencies that provided comment, our building division, of course, just commented on future building requirements. The Lakes Highway District did have concerns or warned Kootenai County about looking for incrementalism that these zone changes typically have. But again, when we're looking at future subdivision, we'll have to analyze that at that application time. Panhandle Health had no concerns, but just had a reminder over aquifer requirements. And Northern Lakes Fire District, again, similar to building permit, had requirements for future development of the site. Back to the area of city impact, the exclusive tier with the city of Hayden. When we look at that agreement, there are 4 items that Kootenai County needs to enforce as part of that agreement. Number 3, that's specifically to zone changes, and that's the most relevant in this case. It states the county agrees to zone land within the exclusive tier at a density that will be compatible with the respective city's comprehensive plan. But of course, this doesn't require a change to existing zoning. However, the applicant was also made aware of the other requirements which come into play at future subdivision or development. And I do want to note number 4 tends to be the most important, as it requires the applicant to actually use public sewer, public water systems when they propose a future subdivision. So when we reached out to the city of Hayden, I've highlighted some key items from their response. The city of Hayden said they would like to enter into a deferred area of city impact agreement with the owner. That'd be something between them. They did confirm that this proposal is consistent with their comprehensive plan, which meets the exclusive tier requirement. If annexed, the property would be zoned agricultural or agriculture, and that's the city of Hayden zoning term. But the similar uses between Kootenai County's rural and city of Hayden's agricultural are very similar. They have very similar uses, lot sizes, and the setbacks. Future subdivision, of course, would be consistent with the city of Hayden. Our comprehensive plan says, or our exclusive tier says that as well. They'll support no more than 12 lots at future subdivision, plan for future connectivity annexation, and it must be consistent with the city's transportation plan. And they did give us just a little snippet of what they require as far as sewer or public water connection. Here it's sewer. They state the project site is 60 acres, and if the property were within the city, the applicant could provide sewer through an approved sewer mechanism, i.e. septic systems. I believe that's probably because there's no sewer currently in this area for the city of Hayden. To be clear, municipal sewer. For the public comment, for the hearing examiner, we received 3 comments that were opposed, and that's a combination of prior to the hearing and at the hearing. Leading up to this hearing, we received 1 response opposed and 3 in support. A summary of all the concerns we received is a depletion of the Rathrum Prairie aquifer, concern for increased density, a need to preserve agricultural land, and low water pressure from the Gem State Water Association. To summarize just staff analysis, staff does find that the application was sufficient, and we do find that it does meet all the requirements for a zone change, all the required findings. It is adjacent to parcels zoned rural. It's consistent with ours and the city of Hayden's comprehensive plan. It's compatible with surrounding zoning and the history of zoning in the area. It meets the parcel sizes in the area. The main difference, agriculture and rural do have very similar uses. They do allow for agricultural in both zones. The main difference, of course, is you can't subdivide in the agricultural zone. the hearing examiner, to highlight what the hearing examiner's recommendation. It's very similar to what staff's findings were. It's consistent with both the City of Hayden's and Kootenai County's comprehensive plan. It meets the City of Hayden's intended zoning and annexation. And we did address public water, sewer, and density a little bit, but of course, we'll have to look at that more deeply at the subdivision application. And it's consistent with the adjacent subdivision processes that they went through for Diamond Bar Estates and Bocal Estates. And I stand for any questions you have.
Okay, questions for staff? Okay. My question is, are they, Bocal and Diamond Bar, are they both 5 acre?
Yes, I believe so. I think actually a few of them might be less than 5, but I believe they meet the gross acreage
Sure.
requirement.
Okay. Thank you. All right, I think we're ready for the applicant then.
Can I get that?
Yeah.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ray Kimball. I'm an engineer for Whipple Consulting Engineers. My business address is 21 South Pines in Spokane Valley. I'm here this morning. Wow, I'm usually here at night, I feel like. I'm here this morning representing the owner, Ryan Built Homes, for the zone change. So first I want to thank the staff and they've done a fantastic job. We agree with the staff report and the hearing examiner's recommendation. And I apologize, we're going to see a little bit of redundancy here because staff has done such a thorough job. So this is the vicinity map you can see there in the aerial. In yellow, we have Bocal Road on the north, Atlas on the west. Just to the west of the property is the Harbs land application area. And of course, you can see residential development in 5 acre tracts to the south, to the northwest, and also directly to the north of the property. This is the vicinity zoning map. You can see it just outlined there in yellow. We have the ag zone currently, and you can see the rural zones in kind of that tan orangish color in the surrounding areas. So this is a little bit of a zoom in. So you can see that there is rural zone very, very basically adjacent to just across the road of the railroad tracks. And of course, in the future land use map, I've got it circled there in green, that little area there. And it shows this as transitional. And as Amy pointed out, what does that mean? That means that as a county, we kind of defer to a city because it's in their exclusive tier. And so this is kind of one of those awkward places where we have 2 comprehensive plans to deal with. So this is the description. It's largely pasture land. There's some ag buildings out there, Quonset hut, a couple of hay sheds and things like that. Pretty typical of the area. This was owned previously by Bob Turnipseed, who did the Diamond Bar Estates development, pretty prominent land developer and citizen in the area. Transportation master plan, this is straight out of the KMPO master plan for the area. This talks towards, this talks towards the transportation element, both access, the property will access both onto Bocal and Atlas, thank you, and both are collector streets as designated in the transportation master plan. Any traffic mitigation will be dealt with at the time of development. Utility-wise, so Gem State Water Association, there is, I think, right here, that little building right there. I think that's an old well house. I think Gem State Water Association used to be attached to that. I don't know if they are anymore, but that's an existing well there. Gem State Water Association used to be Diamond Bar Water Association. It is consolidated and is now Gem State. That was started by Bob Turnipseed. And there is an existing water main that runs right up this property line, right there. So, and so we've had some preliminary conversations with them about potentially serving this. That's as far as it's gone. Of course, we're over the Raft and Prairie Aquifer, and domestic wells with plenty of water are easy to get. Power and communications are available in the streets and the adjacent easements, and sewer, of course, will be served on a 5-acre basis upon future development approved by Panhandle Health District. Same stuff you guys see all the time. As we talked about before, the transitional land use designation points us towards the area city impact and how we deal with that. So that kind of puts us into, well, what would this look like if it were annexed into the city? And so the city of Hayden, their future land use map calls this agriculture, and it has a zone. So this is the property right here. And so their zoning designation in that is agriculture, which basically says that if it were annexed into the city of Hayden today, they would annex it as 5-acre lots with uses and setbacks and lot coverages that are almost exactly the same as the county's rural zoning. This is probably one of the rare times where everything fits hand in glove, where a city comprehensive plan and the county's comprehensive plan actually fit very, very well together. So surrounding land uses, as I talked about, Harbors to the west, there's primarily 5 and 10-acre residential parcels surrounding it. The justification, we talk about that in depth in our narrative. I won't belabor the point here. We do meet all the requirements of state code, county code for the justification. That's all in our narrative. That's in the staff report. That's also in the hearing examiner's report. So I think we've hit that 3 times. And the approval standards, and as you can see in the staff report, as well as the hearing examiner's recommendation, we have met all of the approval standards for a zone change, and we are requesting approval of the zone change. And if you have any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to address them for you.
All right. Bill, questions?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll open it up to the public. Angela Adams, in favor, does not wish to speak. And if you've changed your mind, just let me know. Debbie Matthews, in favor, does not wish to speak. And Sam Johnson, in favor, does not wish to speak. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in favor or against this zone change? Anybody on Zoom, David?
If there's anyone on Zoom that would like to speak to this issue, please unmute yourself and go right ahead. Apparently not.
All right, well then I would entertain a motion into deliberations ending public testimony.
I move that we enter into deliberations and end public testimony.
Second.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's fairly straightforward. It's not like a major change. It's a small change, and it's compatible with the surrounding parcels that are, so I have no problem with it at all.
Okay, I agree. Would you like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the request for zone change for ZON 22-0005, Atlas zone change.
Second.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right, that ends that one, and we can open up the next public hearing, which is ORA 23-0002, and this is an exemption for family division of land. And David? Are you going to start us on this one?
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioners. David Callahan, Community Development Director. I'll do a little stage setting first because conditions have changed a little bit as of this morning. But first of all, in your electronic packet, you have a memo from me that explains some of the history of this. The nutshell of that is that what's before you is very similar to something we discussed a couple of years ago, the same kind of exemption, because we, the staff then, had borrowed it from a neighboring county and massaged it to work for our community. But if you'll pardon the comparison, it didn't really get out of committee, if you will, because the then county commissioners and then planning commission were not in favor of it. So we let that sleeping dog lie. But any person may apply, and in this case we have a resident and their consultant, Rand Wickman, applied for a code amendment and in that way it's very similar to what was discussed before, but there are some differences. And all of that's in your packet in the way of information from Mr. Wickman, and it's in a draft format like Pat would normally do for a code amendment. That's been in front of the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission recommended denial, and it's in front of you for a full-blown public hearing today. Your options are, at the moment, if you agree with the Plan Commission, you could just outright deny it today and we're done with this. But at least two other options come to mind. Because you have new information that Mr. Wickman will present, and I'll pull it up on the screen for you in a moment, that in my view at least is sufficiently significantly different from what the Plan Commission considered, you could remand it back to the Plan Commission to see if it changes their recommendation. That would be entirely your call, and one you may or may not want to do after you talk with the applicant and their consultant. Because my sense of it is they just as well go forward with you and not go back to the Plan Commission, but that's a dialogue we should have here in the public hearing. The other option is we could just go ahead and schedule for a date certain in December or November 30th or December 14th and have this all over as a de novo hearing, if you will, with the new language. That again is entirely a discretionary call on your part. So at this point, if you're and the applicants are agreeable to it, my thought is we go ahead and pull up on the screen what's new, let you get your mind around it, let them explain why, and go from there.
Madam Chair, just one note on that. If the board were inclined to want to approve this with or without the changes that Mr. Callahan described, a second hearing would be required.
Thank you, Pat.
Or amend to the Planning Commission, either one.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am very happy to be here today. My name is Rand Wickman, sorry. You'd think I'd know that by now. My name is Rand Wickman, 2992 Gotham Bay Road, Harrison, Idaho is my address. Before I dive into my presentation, I would like to congratulate David on his tenure here. You may know that I was two directors prior to David, and I only lasted 5 years in that position, and it takes a special individual to be able to stick it out for 10 years, and my congratulations to him for doing that, or perhaps it's condolences. But either way, I think it's a significant accomplishment. I can't think of another director since Kootenai County started zoning in 1973, I can't think of another director who has lasted 10 years in that position. And so, so I think that's a pretty significant accomplishment, and my congratulations to David on that. I do have paper copies of this revised document that David's got up on there, and I can hand those out if that's okay. Gives you something to scribble on if you.
Entered into the record as B
Thank you.
2000 exhibit.
Thank you, yeah.
And if there's anybody in the audience that would like a copy as well, just put them on the table here. I'm gonna give you two there. Not very good at that. I'll just leave them here on the table. Thank you. Again, Commissioners, thanks for hearing us this morning. This will not come as news to you, but we have a housing affordability problem here in Kootenai County. Nearly every day, we see a news article about the housing shortage and rising costs. We hear about families whose children can't stay in the area because they can't afford to live here in spite of having a good job. I think we all know people that are directly affected by the issue. The good folks with the Panhandle Affordable Housing Alliance and others are working every day to help find solutions to that. Their programs will help for some, but this is a significant problem that requires numerous solutions. Market forces are hard to overcome, and we simply can't grow our way out of this unless we grow so much that we make the area unattractive to those who want to move here. And nobody in Kootenai County wants to see that. At the same time, while it gets fewer headlines, we also see people in my generation struggling to find appropriate care solutions for aging parents. We live longer than we used to. Sometimes we outlive our ability to take care of ourselves. The cost of assisted living care can be prohibitive, and often the solution is as simple as some assistance from family to allow an aging parent to continue to live independently. That's accomplished much easier if your neighbor is a family member. Those are both big issues. One amendment to Kootenai County's development code will not entirely solve either one of them. But the amendment we're proposing will make a real difference on these types of issues for a dozen or two Kootenai County families every year. What we're proposing is a relatively simple amendment to allow for a one-time gift of property to a family member, subject to numerous limitations to allow families to be their own support network. To qualify for a family division exemption, and you'll see it on the screen here, the property can't have been previously divided by an exempt family division. The owner has to have owned the property for at least 3 years prior to the proposed family division. An individual can only receive one parcel created by exempt family division in their lifetime. New parcels must be 5 acres minimum and have access to a public road and meet all other code requirements. Parcels so created that are not retained by the original grantee are not eligible for building permits for a period of 5 years. And then, to touch on the two items outlined or highlighted in yellow, based on our experience with the Planning Commission earlier this year, we added these two restrictions that we think the board may wish to consider. And that is why they are here. They are suggestions for your consideration. We are not formally amending our request, but we think these items are responsive to the Planning Commission's concerns for your consideration. There's a subtle difference there, I guess. But regardless, the first one, if we could go back toward the top there, David, thank you. Bonner County has in their code a provision that limits family divisions to 4 or fewer. And that was a concern for the Planning Commission. We don't, some families, we did not include that initially because some families have more than 4 kids. But in keeping with the purpose of this exemption or this request, No parents really require 14 kids to take care of them, well, with the possible exception of mine, but that you've not met. But we think 4 is probably sufficient to meet that requirement, and we think that's a fair limitation to put on this proposal. The second one would limit these grants of these parcels to adults, essentially, that you can't get, one of the concerns expressed by one of the planning commissioners was that, he would get around these waiting periods that we've put in here by just, hey, I'm gonna give my 3-year-old or 5-year-old kid this parcel. That way, by the time, he turns 18, he can go and sell it. And, he evades the 5-year limitation on building permits and so on. I don't think it's legal for minors to own real estate. But this provision, would cover that in case of that possibility. It just eliminates the possibility that somebody's, waiting out this, one of these waiting periods by giving it to a minor child. As I mentioned, again, both of those are there for your consideration. We're not opposed to them, but if you think they add value to this, we think it appropriate for you to consider adding them as additional restrictions. As I mentioned, Bonner County has similar provision in their code, as does Spokane County. Somewhat surprisingly, considering Washington State's growth management framework, Spokane County's code has relatively few restrictions that they place on these family divisions. Density is only limited by the underlying zone. There's no limit to the number of parcels a single grantee can be gifted in their lifetime. In the opinion of the Spokane County senior planner that we talked to, their exemption may be somewhat overused. I suspect she's being rather diplomatic in her terminology there. But the county commissioners over there aren't really concerned about the abuse of their exemption, as they see it as an important tool to reduce the exodus of young adults from their community, and it provides an opportunity for children to look after their parents in their later years. That sounds kind of familiar. That's what we think this is for as well. In the last couple of years, Spokane County's created 200 to 300 parcels per year using this exemption. And that's not surprising either, given their much larger population and far less restrictive requirements. While the purpose of Spokane County's exemption is similar to what we're proposing, their implementation's meaningfully different than what we would propose. In Bonner County, they have an exemption that's pretty similar to what we are proposing, especially if you add the 4 parcel limitation per family. Planning staff in that jurisdiction believes the exemption is used as generally intended, and they have seen between 10 to 20 parcels per year created using this exemption in each of the last 3 years. Not very many. The proposed amendment you are considering this morning takes the best provisions from both of those jurisdictions with a particular eye toward minimizing the potential for abuse by the development community and tailors the exemption to work with Kootenai County Code. Now, the county code already has a couple of exemptions to the subdivision process. We've got the large lot exemption, where someone who owns 40 acres or more can divide the property into 20-acre parcels, and the exemption that we call testamentary provisions that allows a person to create parcels in their will and then get conveyed to their heirs upon the property owner's death. The large lot exemption, because of the amount of land required, is not an option for most families. Most folks just don't have the land necessary for that option to be available to them. The testamentary provisions exemption is an interesting one. It allows for the exact same kind of lots to be created as what we're proposing with this new exemption, although with far fewer restrictions on the testamentary provision approach. But because of the timing that's involved, you have to wait for the property owner to die. That exemption causes the family to miss out on many of the significant benefits that would otherwise come from the creation of that parcel of land. Those are the family benefits of this family division exemption. Some examples of that include the parent giving their young adult child a parcel to reduce the cost of building a home so that they can stay in this community. Granting a parcel to a family member so that they can live close to help the older generation stay in the home without the need to move to some assisted living facility. Or something, similar, but just the opposite really, where the younger generation creates a parcel to move their older generation closer so that they can take care of them. Or to assist with childcare for the next generation, which is another growing concern in our society. Or a scenario that hits closer to home, for me, where you move a sibling onto the property to provide the help and support they need for whatever reason. I was fortunate enough to be able to do that for my sister. It made a life-changing difference for her in the most significant way. And so I could go on for a long time about the scenarios where this exemption is beneficial and how it allows families to stay close and to take care of each other without the need for some outside assistance. That's a significant benefit to our community and to society as a whole. We don't see enough of that these days and need to do more to encourage it, in my opinion. In August, we had our Planning Commission hearing on this request. With the exception of John Malloy, it appeared the Commission believed the potential for abuse of the exemption outweighed any benefit that could come from it. I felt like most of their concerns were somewhat far-fetched, as did several others who watched the proceedings. I don't know how much information you've been given regarding their hearing or their recommendation, but we included, as I said, these two additional provisions I previously mentioned to address their concerns the best we could. Some planning commissioners also seem concerned that any parcel created without the scrutiny of the subdivision process is a potential problem. To me, that doesn't ring true. When the number of parcels that will be created with the family division exemption is a single-digit percentage of the parcels created using other exemptions in Kootenai County. For comparison, I participated in or have personal knowledge of well over 500 parcels created using the large lot exemption within the last year. 500 parcels. If I had to guess, I would expect that represents perhaps 1/2 of the number of those parcels created by that method in that same time period. You can't tell me with a straight face that a couple dozen parcels that we create using family division exemptions will have a significant negative impact on infrastructure or community when several hundred or more are created by large lot exemption, and we don't really have any concern for their impact, or we aren't doing anything to address their impact. It just doesn't add up. Furthermore, I'll reiterate that the very same parcels that could be created through the family division exemption can be created with the testamentary provisions exemption, only the timing is different. We don't concern ourselves with the incremental impact from those testamentary provision divisions. The difference in timing of when the divisions occur does not change the incremental impact of such divisions, but it does take away the very real family benefits that come from the proposed amendment. Lastly, and I'm almost done, I promise. Lastly, you might ask why we need to create a parcel of land to accomplish our objectives here. Why not an accessory dwelling unit or a temporary hardship use? Those solutions may work for some families, but where separate financing is necessary, the young couple trying to afford their first home, for example, a separate parcel is necessary under separate ownership in order to properly finance that. So why not do a minor subdivision? You might ask, primarily because the expense associated with minor subdivisions and the time delays that are associated with it. It's not uncommon for a minor subdivision with a common driveway that has to be built to cost $50,000 to $100,000 to complete. Without a common driveway to construct, minor subdivisions typically cost $20,000 to $30,000, sometimes more, almost never less. I know that because I'm in that business and I do perhaps a half a dozen minor subdivisions a year. Some properties, such as those in the ag zone or on the reservation, don't have the option to do a minor subdivision. In those cases, Again, they can create the very same parcel by testamentary provisions, so why not with a family division so the family benefit is not lost? As I stated earlier, a range of solutions is needed to fit the wide range of circumstances that exist out there. And really, I think the better question to ask instead of why do we need it is really, why don't we have it? We are, as I mentioned, we are happy to discuss adjustments to this proposal if the board feels they are necessary. But with or without the yellow highlighted sections, we feel this is a solid and beneficial amendment. In closing, I would share this. I believe Kootenai County has become so focused on playing defense against the development community and the impact of their developments, and rightly so, perhaps, that they appear to have lost sight of the impact of ever-increasing restrictions on regular, non-development folks that just want to take care of their own. Our fear of the impact from those who are yet to come has caused us to overlook the needs of those who are already here. This amendment's a small step to help reestablish some balance there and to help Kootenai County families. And I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to address any questions you might have.
So, a couple different thoughts. I do have questions for staff, though, and then we will discuss our three options, what we'd like to do. The way it's currently written, David, does the zoning, underlying zoning matter?
Yes. It ultimately sets the lot size.
Okay, so in agriculture, we couldn't do 5-acre lots. We would have to stick to the 20 minimum.
5 acres is the minimum in ag.
Oh, okay.
What's always confusing about that is ag doesn't allow subdivisions. This is not a subdivision, it's an exemption.
Right.
Yeah, and exemptions are expressly, exempt land divisions are expressly allowed in the ag zone.
Okay. And then what about CC&Rs, if there's a prohibition with CC&Rs?
Those would still prevail,
Okay,
but it's always the private property owner has to enforce that.
right,
When we know about these kinds of things, and that's why there's written in here a review by staff,
right.
we try and bring that up and deal with it before it goes too far.
Okay,
You've seen cases where the staff would recommend denial on a minor subdivision for that reason.
sure. Okay, so then with staff's review, then that is a possibility that it would be denied should one of these criteria not be met or there would be a CC&R issue.
Let me catch up with you and
Okay.
bring Pat into the discussion. I'm thinking out loud, Pat. We'd be referring, or once we know about this, we would just check to see if we knew about CC&Rs, I gather. But if we found them to conflict, we'd have to tell the applicant, you shouldn't go forward, but we couldn't actually prevent it, could we?
Let me look at
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what the wording says.
Yeah, and I'm trying, okay. Yeah, I don't think that would be a basis for denial of one of these. We can certainly mention that, to the applicant and say, if you do this, well, you might say something like, you might want to consult with an attorney regarding this provision. Because we can't actually give them legal advice.
Oh, right, but if the commissioners wanted to add something to the effect that it can be denied
Yeah,
based
if
on
you can add it to
CC&Rs.
we can add it to the ordinance language if that's the board's desire. That's not a problem, and I don't think that would be a material change.
Okay,
Well, we'd be having a second hearing at some level anyway if we
Anyway.
were
Right.
inclined, yes, so.
Yeah,
Doesn't really matter if it's a material change or not.
Correct. Okay. So I probably would be in favor of revisiting this with at least that addition and the proposed additions by the applicant, having a public hearing and maybe having it at night so more people could chime in. I don't know about remanding it back to planning and zoning with these changes. I'm not sure if that would be helpful or not, but Bill, what are your thoughts on that
I would be in favor of remanding it to planning and zoning.
with these changes?
Yes, yes, and let them take a look at it. Because I don't like doing things on the fly.
And that's a board discretionary call.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, it'd be kind of a stalemate, so one of us got to vote with the other one. So, so that's fine to remand it back to them, but with the provision that you are able to deny it
Not
based,
if,
yeah. If
The two changes plus the ability to deny if it violates CCNRs.
Well, not just CCNRs, but if it violates any of if it doesn't comply with the exemption, because to me, I didn't really see that. It just says he reviews it to see if it complies, but even if it doesn't comply, they can still record it, so.
Okay,
I-
yeah,
I'd-
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'd want to make sure that we could do that. Any other changes you want planning and zoning to consider?
No, there is a lady though who,
and there are people on Zoom I know that want to speak.
Sure, so with remanding it, they're going to be able to speak to planning and zoning and then at a subsequent hearing.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
is that,
I think if they wish to speak now, they should have their chance to speak.
okay? All right, then we'll continue on with Vince Hughes. In favor, wishes to speak?
Vince Hughes, 11791 West Prairie Avenue, Post Falls. Thank you for your time this morning. I guess I want to address 3 items and try not to duplicate what Rand talked about. But number 1, how can we make our county government work better and more efficiently for the citizens and families of Kootenai County? Excuse me. Why would a citizen choose to use the county legislative initiative process? I'm not sure if that's exactly what we're doing here, but something like that. And why should our 3 county commissioners approve the family division amendment? So, first of all, as Rand pointed out, we have a problem with affordable housing. Young workforce aged families are forced to leave the area. I'm sure that anecdotally, we could all come up with many cases of that. I know of 10 or 15 families that have left because the cost of housing for these young families is too much. The subdivision process has become expensive, time-consuming, and cumbersome for the average citizens. Developers with big budgets can make it through the process, pass on the expenses to future home buyers. It is tough for a typical family to split off a piece of their land for a family member and build on it and have it economical for that family member to live there. The family division exemption would not solve all of these problems, but will benefit a bunch of families in our community. And extrapolating on the numbers that Rand projected, if there's 25 or 30 families that benefit every year from this, over the 10-year period, that becomes a significant amount of citizens in our county that benefit. And it's not the developers that are benefiting. This amendment has been tailored so that it is only for families, that there's not an incentive for developers to try to abuse this. Why would a citizen such as myself choose to go through this legislative process? Because I believe strongly that families are the building block of a strong society. If we don't have strong families, we run into all kinds of societal problems. A county with strong families will eliminate many of the problems facing our metropolitan areas that you hear in the news every day, of the crime, the homelessness, all those type of things. Strong families are vitally important for Kootenai County. This amendment is pro-family. It's something that if it's an option for family, it'll make some families, it'll benefit some families very, very much. This is not a pro-big developer amendment. I highly doubt that any developers would come in here and spend their time and their money trying to push an amendment like this. There's no benefit for a developer to this. Why should our 3 commissioners approve this family division amendment? Federal and state governments encourage behaviors.
Who's part of the
There's
applicant?
tax deductions for charitable contributions. Nonprofit organizations do not pay income taxes. You look at the Kroc Center. I am the president and of the nonprofit that runs the ice rink here in town that benefits a lot of our citizens. Not having to pay property taxes is a big benefit to the nonprofits, churches, et cetera. We have VA programs, including home loans. We have child tax credits. We have first-time home buyers programs. Those encourage behaviors that our government wants to see their citizens do. And on the county side, we have the same type of things. Like I said, nonprofits don't pay property taxes. Homeowners get a property tax exemption. Agriculture and timber exemptions exist. And there's a property tax reduction program, which I think is formally called the circuit breaker, all to help segments of our society or try to encourage areas for our citizens to make our community stronger and our county stronger. By approving the family division amendment, Kootenai County will be provided a tool to help families. Encouraging strong families is very worthwhile and benefits for our entire county. And it will also free up staff time for the other projects, not having to do as many minor subdivisions. And I thank you for your time.
Any questions? Okay. Michelle Williams, opposed, does not wish to speak. Deborah Mitchell, opposed, wishes to speak.
Thank you for hearing me today. I will try to keep this within the time limits. First of all, I want to say that I sympathize with the reasons, and I am very pro-family. I think that's a great thing to be striving for. But this proposal is a short-sighted and short-term solution to a larger problem. Once a parcel of land is broken apart, you cannot put it back together. If you put a family member on your property, or let me say that differently. If you divide your property and give somebody 5 acres so they can live near you and help take care of you, that only lasts for as long as you're alive. Once you are deceased, what happens to the remainder? So the family idea of continuing family is gone. It's a very short-term solution. I would be in favor of having temporary housing put on a larger piece of land, mobile home or modular homes or tiny homes, or expanding the size of the existing home. Those would be real solutions without dividing the land. The reason that land needs to stay together, especially in the agricultural area, is because of 2 reasons that the county is focusing on. And so this action of amending the code that has been requested is contrary to the Board of Commissioners' current request for a bond for open space. How can you ask people to raise money for a $50 million bond and then turn right around and open up an amendment that allows more division? Additionally, it's contrary to the Board of Commissioners' cooperation with the Coeur d'Alene tribe on maintaining agricultural zoning. And the tribe is very ambitious right now and eager in trying to buy back their lands so that they can continue to maintain open spaces without having more divisions. And part of that reason that they're doing that is not just because of their ways of life and their existence, but also in the South County where I own agriculture property, is because of the wildlife migration from Micah Peak down to the lake. So every time you divide a piece of land and put up another fence, you are restricting the free movement and migration of our wildlife. So I have a couple of examples to show you that I believe are short-sighted in this proposal. May I just finish quickly?
How much time?
I
do you
have
need?
3 sentences.
Okay, is it something you've already submitted to us?
Yes,
Okay, because I have it up on my screen right here.
about
Short-sighted
the,
example
the
one,
imagine a
short-
trustee of 40 acres.
Yep,
Giving 10 acres of land to a cousin who likewise, okay. My question would be is what happens to the remaining acreage? That's, especially like if you start with 20 acres and you get 5 acres to relative B, what happens to the remaining 15 acres? You now have 2 lots zoned agriculture that are less than 20. So how,
except 5 acres is allowed in the agricultural.
right, it is allowed, but let me just say one more thing.
Deborah,
Before
I'm
COVID,
sorry, I have it right here. I have it
Okay.
prior to COVID. We have all that information.
Okay.
So, and we will be having another public hearing, at least 2, one in between planning and zoning and one for
Okay.
us. So we actually just have things that we've got to
all right.
move on to, so.
Okay, just so David knows, I'm going to propose that you eliminate the entire exemption on the 5 acres,
Okay.
the testamentary.
So with that, anybody else speaking for or against this proposed amendment? Okay, yes, sure.
And we do have people on Zoom that I know would like to speak.
Okay, and your name?
My name is Ryan DeMar, and I'm here with my wife Jennifer DeMar. We have a property at the corner of Ness and Sunup Bay Road. It's a 20-acre lot. We love Coeur d'Alene, and it's our dream for our whole family to live here. And we have our kids that currently live with us. We bought the property years ago, and when we bought the property, it was listed as a subdividable property. We have 4 kids. We thought we'd buy the 20 acres, divide it up, each kid would get 5 acres. Seems pretty simple. We went to do the division with the county, and they said that they were putting a halt on all minor subdivisions when we went to do it. And so now we got into this downward spiral where we're seeing literally every dollar, every bit of our entire life savings we used to buy that lot. And our dream is to have our kids live with us on that lot. If it's 4 lots, I could see each one of my kids getting their own construction loans and building their own homes and having their own community there. If we don't do that, we're just gonna build a gigantic barndominium or something, and we're all still gonna be there. It's the same amount of people on the same lot. So I'm 100% for the family division. It's a way for my kids to be able to afford a place to live here, because if you know what the costs on land are now, it's not affordable for a kid to purchase a lot and get a construction loan and build on it. It's not possible for someone, even fresh out of high school, making $100,000 a year. You cannot qualify to build a home here in Kootenai County. And this is where I want my family to live. So I pray that you guys let this family exemption go through. It's a life changer for us and our family. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in the audience? And sir?
My name is Mike Freed. We own some property outside of Worley on Cottonwood Road. My wife's brother and us bought the 10-acre lot, and with a total plan to divide it into 2 5s, so when we pass, our kids don't have to fight over who gets what out of our joint ownership. We paid for everything, all the way up to, everything was signed off except the tribe hadn't signed it off yet. And that was like 2 weeks after that idiot that tried to put 15 minor subdivisions together and got them all upset. Anyway, so we're out thousands of dollars, and we still can't split our piece of property. And I'm all for the family exemption.
Thank you. All right, anybody on Zoom?
Mr. Seal, Joel Seal, I know you wanted to speak. Would you please unmute yourself and go ahead?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for the time to speak. My name is Joel Seal. I own property with my family near Santa Fe Road. My wife and I are currently building our family. We have an amazing son and a daughter on the way due in January. And our future family is the reason why we bought our property a few years ago. Talking about family, we kind of live in a crazy world that seems to be trying to tear families down. Some very prominent organizations are calling for the destruction of the nuclear family. And there are lots of climate alarmists telling us that we shouldn't have kids because we're destroying the planet. But North Idaho is different. Here we accept that family is perhaps the most important institution in society. Some in the past have asked, well, why should we give families special treatment? But underlying this question is a perilous equivocation. Families are not a special interest group. They are not a victim class. They are the foundation of a strong community. We should be doing everything in our power to strengthen families while the world tears them down. The proposal in front of you is an excellent plan that will strengthen local families. It doesn't help developers. It doesn't help people looking to make a quick buck. It will increase housing affordabilities for local families at a time when affordability is approaching a crisis. Furthermore, we have great precedent for our neighbors in Bonner and Spokane County who successfully implemented this division. And I would note those are significantly less restrictive than the one here today. In the last public hearing, there was a lot of speculation about worst case scenarios and how people might try to take advantage of such a family division. Now, these are important to discuss and maybe set some guardrails for, but I would encourage you and then also the Planning Commission to instead focus on how this can help families in Kootenai County. Finally, the very idea of the family division was proposed, I would note, about 3 years ago by Planning and Zoning as quid pro quo in exchange for other restrictions that are being looked at for minor subdivisions primarily. The county is still pursuing those other restrictions on subdivisions. This today isn't some bold new proposal, has lots of precedent. And at the end of the day, it's merely Kootenai County honoring its words. That's what we were told in our pre-application meetings, that we would most likely have this family exemption. Meanwhile, the minor subdivision might not work for us. So I would encourage you, please stand up for families, strengthen your commitment to families in Kootenai County, the North Idaho way of life, and please approve this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on
I
Zoom?
think my wife would like to speak too on the same device case.
Okay.
Hello. I'm Tiffany Steele and Joel's wife. We have the same property. I just wanted to say that I'm for the family subdivision if possible, because we personally know some friends who have lived with their parents currently to try to save up for homes for a couple of years. And we've watched essentially even as they live with their parents and try to save money, they're outpriced by the housing market, which is very crazy. We even have a friend whose parent is living with them, and they just had to change his living arrangements because their family is also growing. So it's a great impact. And essentially, we can see that the risk here is that families with homes are going to be almost obsolete and are going to have to in favor of have to transition to apartments instead, because that's going to be kind of the only affordable living solution. So we're hoping that this family subdivision can go through so that we can try to essentially have a hope in the future for our kids, because the possibility that they won't be able to afford a home of their own or land of their own in the future is a very real possibility. So we're just trying to plan for that and try to secure our children's future. So we're really hoping that this can go through to try to preserve that small family community rather than apartment properties that are more realistically going to be the future of the area if things like this don't go through, if that makes sense. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have Amy Reed, Connie, and Dale Seal, and Stephanie Blaylock all on Zoom. Do any of you wish to speak to this subject?
I know Dale wants to speak. I think he's probably trying to unmute himself.
Anyone else on Zoom want to speak to this subject? Apparently not.
Okay. So does this require well, I do have a question first, but I think it requires a motion to remand back to planning and zoning.
After you move to close the public hearing.
Okay. Question, no fee has been set up for this.
Oh,
So there's got to be some administrative
you're right.
fee.
We'll have to magic up the actual cost.
Okay. So if you could work
And then
on
that
that.
can be, if this were passed, then that could be adopted by resolution.
Okay, perfect. So would you like to close public testimony?
Sure, I move that we close public testimony.
Second.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Chair Duncan,
Aye. All right, would you like to make a motion to remand back to?
Yes, I move that we remand RA 23-0002 exempt family division of land back to planning and zoning.
To consider the changes discussed today. Second.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right, that concludes our meeting, 11:07, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.